noticed that the last 5 minutes was kind of tough on the family. I want to kind of give you guys a look back as to why it was so tough and what this woman brought to the family. So when I was born, my mom was living with my grandmother. And I was born in St. Mary's, and my mom, they were living in Carver Terrace, 1134 G was the number. And I take, with that applause, I take they got some other folks in there from Carver Terrace. So Carver Terrace kind of made us who we are today. So when my mom brought me back there, it was my mom and all her siblings and my grandmother. So with all the siblings and my grandmother, it was 10 of us living there. That same year, my Aunt Brenda got married to my Uncle Rodney. And then a few months later, my Uncle Gumbo left. So it was 8 of us there in about a 500 square foot room, 3 bedrooms, and those who live in Carver Terrace, you know, if you walk out of one bedroom, all you need to take is another step and you're in the next bedroom, right? So at that time, I know y'all noticed I didn't say father was around because my grandfather died when my mom was 13 years old. He died of cancer. So my grandmother had to raise all of us through this. And the perception at that time was that Carver Terrace was you were poor, broke, all these different things, but we never missed a meal. We always had clothes. Right, so we may have been poor, but I didn't know it, you know, because with all the other families, with Miss Helen there, Miss Rose, and Willie Mae, and all these other, we had a good family thing going on. Right? So at that time, you know, my grandmother made sure we were all taken care of. As time went on, we all started to grow and families started to move on, but we always congregated back at my grandmother's house. So, and I say we congregated back, that wasn't the only time we came to our grandmother's house. So we would go back there. If somebody got into a marriage dispute, I'm going to stay with my mom. If we went home and we didn't like what they were cooking, I'm going to see my grandmother. If we came home or didn't want to go home late, instead of getting in trouble, we're going to grandmother's house. Now granted, you go to grandmother's house, she gonna open the door, she gonna give you a pillow and say go ahead and lay down, but in the morning you get smooth cussed out. Right? Now, while she's cussing you out, she's fixing you breakfast at the same time. So if you can endure the cursing out, that breakfast is well worth it. We're gonna talk about it, right? So as time goes on, the family continues to get bigger and tighter, and I noticed that we all start to move on, and grandchildren start to move on. So the family was so tight that it made it difficult for other people to get into that family. Ask my wife, ask Lil Mike's wife, ask Renee's husband. The family was super tight, so to break that trend, it was pretty tough. And on top of that, my grandmother was one who told you exactly what she felt. And it wasn't in a condescending way. She would say it with a smile, and I can't repeat what she was saying, but you knew what she was thinking at that time. So as we get older, I would always ask myself, how did she do it? You know, here I am, halfway sane. My wife is all the way sane, and we have one kid, and I'm like going crazy sometimes with one kid, you know. And all of us have kids now. Lamine, Tasha, Kevin, we all have kids now, and we've got between 1 and 3 kids, and we can't compare to what my grandmother went through, and we complain all the time. You know, and my grandmother is one who never complained about anything, and she had a hand in all of us being raised, right? So as I asked myself this question, as I get older, I started noticing her mannerisms and things that she would do, right? So she always wanted to be around family all the time. When I asked her one time, she told me faith was one of her biggest drivers to get through what she got through. So I'm going to fast forward now to 6 or 7 weeks ago. So that kind of gave me, asking myself for the past 27 years. So 6 or 7 weeks ago, I get a phone call from my cousin Alicia. She tells me that they just left the doctor. The doctor said that, listen, either she take dialysis or it's over. And at the same time, my aunt Susie texted me she knew her and was very optimistic about everything. So she sent me a text, and she was pretty straightforward, pretty much what Alicia was saying, but it was right to the point. So at that time, I'm in Houston. I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and drive down to Port Arthur. So they ride down to Port Arthur that day. I'm thinking I'm about to see the worst. I'm about to open this door. My grandmother gonna look like a zombie, and she's gonna be depressed because of her visit she just had. I open up the door, and I go to my grandmother, and I give her a hug, and she gives me a smile. And she said, "Oh man," I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And as I walk in the door, it's her, it's my Aunt Kat, it's my Aunt Pam, Aunt Brenda's there, Aunt Susie, Alicia's there, and my cousin Paul was there. So I said, "How you doing?" And my grandmother says, "I'm not doing well." My grandmother has never said that in all her life, "I'm not doing well." Now, in the past 20 some odd years, I've heard my grandmother say before, if we're gonna do something, oh yeah, God spend my life, but this time it was something different. So at the time, I walk away from her, and she said, "Look at you, walking like an old man." Right? So she started making jokes, and she said, "You got a birthday coming up next month." And I was like, "Yeah," said, "You're gonna be 45, 46. I'm like, "Yeah, all right, cool." So now things are clicking, right? So I'm like, okay, she's not doing that bad. She's responding. So I go into the back, and I don't know if this is legal or not, but Alicia recorded the conversation with the doctor. So I get to hear the conversation that the doctor was point blank with my grandmother and told my grandmother that you got days. Like the way your numbers are reading, I think a couple days later they said she should have been in a comatose. Now granted, this was 6-7 weeks ago, right? So I go back into the room, and my grandmother's laughing and talking, and I started thinking, man, my grandmother ain't no punk. This junk is not about to take her down easy like this. So a few hours later comes, and well, not even a few hours later, shortly after that, my grandmother says, "Hey, you gonna eat something, man? Food is a big deal. You gonna eat something, man?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get something to eat." She said, "Well, you going to get something from that chicken place?" She's talking about J&J's, because I like salt and pepper wings. We don't have that in Houston. So my Aunt Susie says, "No, I'm gonna cook some roast and some beans or whatever." Now granted, this is Thursday, but this is the culture that my grandmother has put into this family, that it doesn't have to be a special occasion to fix a big meal. Right? So Susie comes back, and she's cooking. A couple hours later comes. Now at the time, my grandmother had told them at the beginning, "I don't want dialysis." When Susie starts cooking, a couple hours later, she asks my cousin Alicia, says, "So explain this dialysis stuff to me." So they're sitting down talking. When they start talking about it, I get up and I go to the kitchen. I go to the kitchen and I fix me some beans and rice. As I walk back in, my grandmother is zoned in on my plate walking back in. So while they're talking about her life, she says, "Oh man, you don't have enough food on that plate." Right? And I said, "Why is you in my plate?" And they talking about your life right there. Right? So she said, "You don't have enough meat." I said, "Well, the roast is not ready yet. Right? So I'm gonna get some later." Fast forward a little bit later, and that same day, we're all sitting there, and my Aunt Linda is sitting right next to grandmother. Linda is flipping through some Facebook, and she's dying laughing about something. And when she's laughing, my grandmother is laughing hard at her. So, if y'all don't know, my grandmother thinks that Linda and Kevin Natasha are probably the most ignorant people in the world. So, she thinks that they are complete fools. So she's laughing at my Aunt Linda, and I'm thinking to myself, there's a few things. It was faith, we all know about, which everybody here should know about. If you black and don't have faith, you got bigger problems, right? The laughter, my grandmother was all about laughing as well. She loved to laugh all the time. To give you a quick example, I remember a couple years ago there was a family member who couldn't make the Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm calling them a couple days later and say, "Hey, what happened? How did things go for Thanksgiving?" And he says, he started stuttering a little bit. He said, "Man, I can't even lie. Man, ain't nothing like a carrot Thanksgiving." See, I can't even compare to the fun that we have when it's time for us to get down for Thanksgiving. So you have the faith, you have the laughter. The next thing is food. Everybody on this front row has called my grandmother and asked her how to cook something, right? And it wasn't about, when it came to food, she didn't want to go eat at a restaurant. She wanted to eat at home with everybody. And if you call her and ask her how to cook something, and I would say, "Hey, I saw you cook some ribs on the stove with gravy. How does that exist? How do you do it?" She said, yeah, there's teriyaki sauce. And I said, how much teriyaki? I don't measure. She's told me that at least 17 times, that she never measures, right? So the last thing and the most important thing is family. I would notice that my grandmother would do whatever she has to be around her family. So there was one instance, it was probably 5 years ago, she was cooking in the kitchen and we were all in the front room, and she came out of the kitchen with a bowl of some raw okra. She had another bowl that she was gonna sit in her lap. And at the time, I was more enamored with the fact that she was taking that stick of okra with this sharp knife. She was cutting that okra like it was all perfect pieces, and she never looked down. And she was cutting it, and my brother's laughing right now because he was sitting right next to me when we was talking about it. So he was looking, she is looking at everything that's going around and kind of soaking everything in, not wanting to miss nothing. But she's cutting that stuff and making sure she's around her family and keeping that love and everything going, because that's what the culture and the vibe that she gave. So that's the most things I want you guys to take away from here that you know about my grandmother. To the family, I want to say, my grandmother did her part. You know, we got into that room on Monday when grandmother passed. My Uncle Gumbo said for 53 years she was here. Well, no, and she did it. And what you all don't realize is that there was 40 grandchildren and great-grandchildren that she had a hand in, or two hands in raising. Right? So, you know, when I think about my grandmother, this is tough because I was with her very young, and later I tried to figure things out. And there's a song that I'm not gonna sing, but there's a please, Jesus. And I don't know if it's more of a song or more of a testimony or not, but there's a song about a praying grandmother, right? So all those times when we were all away doing stuff, when she should turn her back on us, but she never turned her back on us. So that praying grandmother that we have got us to this point to handle today, gonna get us through this point to go to the future.